Hello everyone, Chris here, and we're back for another deep dive into another hot topic, repairing. More specifically, generator repairing in Dead by Daylight. As this is the main objective of a survivor in the game, it's really important to know how it works, what affects it, how killers will try to stop you, and how you can counter their attempts. As my video about healing, there will be a lot of numbers in this one as well, but I'll try my best to keep it as simple as possible. There might be a few surprises in the video, as when I did all the research and testing, I did get a few aha experiences myself. So without any further delay, let's get right into the video. As with healing and most other actions in Dead by Daylight, it's based on a charges system. A generator takes 90 charges to complete, and you repair with a speed of 1 charge per second, making it take 90 seconds to repair a gen by yourself. If you are with 2 to 4 survivors repairing that gen, the time it takes is just a fourth of the time, like 22.5 seconds, right? Well, no. Already here it gets a bit complicated, so buckle up people. As you can see right here, there is a penalty to repair speed if there are more than 1 survivor repairing the same generator. This is a minus 15% speed penalty per survivor on that gen, up to a total of minus 45% speed penalty for 4 survivors. This means that the generator will be finished at around 41 seconds base speed. Of course, still faster than if you did it alone, but if you talk efficiency, then it would be best if survivors split up and do different gens. Just to paint a picture, 4 survivors doing 5 gens together would take a total of 3 minutes and 25 seconds. If all 4 survivors did 5 separate gens, the total time would be 3 minutes, and that would be just if 1 survivor did the last gen alone. I guess this is a good time to talk about the perk Prove Thyself. And also, damn, this just got complicated so fast, didn't it? I'm sorry, but hang with me everyone. So Prove Thyself is a survivor perk that gives you a 15% speed bonus to gen repair for every survivor that's within 4 meters of you. Now, on paper, this perk basically just cancels out the penalty for repairing the same gen then. Again, it's not that simple. How this game works is that it gives you the base penalty of minus 45% repair speed, then apply the Prove Thyself bonus of 45%, meaning that the equation will look like this. At max, with 4 survivors you will all gain a minus 45% penalty for repairing the same gen. Now you apply the Prove Thyself on top of the base penalty, and that would give you a total of 0.8 charges per second of repair speed. So in total, you will all be slower than normal, even with the Prove Thyself buff, so it only partially counters this penalty. I just thought this was nice to know. At the end of the day, it's all situational in how the game goes and what would be the most efficient at the time. Next, let's look at perks. Right off the bat, there isn't really that many perks that affects gen repair speed like you have with healing speed, where you can stack perks to get over 500%. There is only a handful of perks that gives smaller amount of gen repair speed, and there probably is a reason for that. First of all, healing in Dead by Daylight does not directly contribute to the main objective of the survivors, and having someone being healed in 8 seconds instead of 16 doesn't necessarily mean the survivors will win the game. Being able to repair a gen at half speed by just slotting on a few perks would be a bit more game breaking. I'm not saying there aren't ways of making the gen repair being insanely fast, but we'll get back to that. Second of all, as we know, speed is all based on charges per second. Having a healing speed of 2 charges per second, making it take 8 seconds instead of 16 seconds to heal someone, is not the same as having a generator go down from 90 seconds to 45 seconds. And that's why this game is and needs to be careful with giving survivors too many possibilities for getting such a high speed bonus to repairing. Moving on, let's just first take a look at the perks that directly affects gen repair speed. Resilience. Resilience gives you a 9% bonus to a variety of things, including repair speed. This requires you to be injured to receive the bonus. With a 9% bonus to repairing, it would take about 82 to 83 seconds to repair a gen alone, not taking into account the skill checks. Spine Chill and Object of Obsession. Spine Chill and Object both give 6% bonus to repairing, whereof Spine Chill requires the killer to look in your direction without any obstacle blocking the side of you. A 6% bonus to repair speed would mean it would take about 85 seconds to repair a gen by yourself, not taking into account skill checks. Overzealous. This perk gives you an 8% bonus to repair speed when you cleanse a totem, or 16% if that totem happens to be a hex totem. The effect persists until you lose a health state. With an 18% bonus to repair speed, it would take about 76 seconds to repair a gen by yourself. Potential energy. This is kind of a weird one because this doesn't really give you any repair speed bonus, but instead of progressing the gen you are working on, you store the charges for an amount up to 20 that you can then deploy on another gen to instantly repair that gen for 1% for each charge. This is a really risky perk though, as you will lose all charges if you get injured. Take into account that this perk converts 1.5 charges of repairing into 1 charge of potential energy, so it's actually a slowdown perk if you think about it that way. But still, in the right hands, this perk can be really good in the endgame. Quick Gambits. This gives everyone who repairs a gen an 8% bonus to progression if you are chased by the killer within 24 meters of the gen that's being repaired. I don't really know about this one. 24 meters in Dead by Daylight is actually a decent amount, but personally, I find this perk to be kind of bad. Skill checks. As with healing, repairing generators will give you random skill checks that you need to perform. Performing a great skill check will award you with a bonus progression of 1% compared to the 5% you get from healing. You can see here what percentage chance you have to receive a skill check per second. As it's fairly low, it's impossible to know how many skill checks you will receive while repairing a gen, but you're guaranteed to at least get a few skill checks, which, if successful, will shave off a few seconds of gen repair time. But now comes the spicy things. How can we take advantage out of this? Well, survivors do have a few perks that synergize well with the skill checks, and primarily there are 3 of them. Fast Track. For every hooked survivor, you gain 3 tokens. Every token gives you 1 charge or 1% of gen progression. With 11 hooks, meaning you are the only one left in the game, that equals 33 tokens or 33% worth of progression. You spend the tokens by performing great skill checks, converting the tokens into progression. Now, this is actually a perk I find interesting, as with just a few hooks, this could give you an additional 10 to 15% worth of progression just by performing great skill checks. As with potential energy, this has some really good potential in specific situations, especially in the later game, and can be combined with toolboxes or potential energy itself to quickly finish off a gen in the endgame. Hyperfocus. Hyperfocus gives you an additional 30% to progression bonus for great skill checks, increasing in bonus up to 6 times, giving you a 150% bonus to skill check progression at max tokens. The bonus gives you these percentages of bonus progression with each token, giving you a total of 12.3% bonus to gen progression total for succeeding all 6 skill checks. And you would get an additional 2.8% progression for every great skill check after that, but good luck with that. The penalty for this is that the skill checks will be faster and faster, and you will notice it's actually extremely difficult to get many consecutive skill checks when you have Hyperfocus. And that's why we have Stakeout. While you are within the killer's territories and not being chased, you slowly gain Stakeout tokens, up to a total of 4 tokens. When you repair a gen, every good skill check you do will spend a Stakeout token to make that a great skill check instead. Which means that with a Hyperfocus Stakeout combination, you are guaranteed to get 4 great skill checks, giving you a bonus of at least 11.2%. Taking into consideration Stakeout itself will give you an additional 1% of progression bonus. That is actually pretty decent. Now, this will be a really important tip for you to take into consideration. When you have spent all the Stakeout tokens, I highly advise to let go of the gen, then continue repairing to reset Hyperfocus. If not, you take a huge risk in missing the next skill check, which will make the generator explode and lose 10% of progress. In addition to that, the repair progress will be halted for 3 seconds, so in total that would cost you 13% of progression. Unless you are super confident in yourself, or the killer is nearby so that you keep earning tokens, then I highly advise resetting Hyperfocus after the first 4 tokens. Though there is one more option, and even though I haven't come to the toolboxes yet in this video, I'll just bring up this add-on right now. The brand new part. By itself, this add-on is extremely good, as it can give you 25% of progression in just 5 seconds. This works by giving the generator an instant 15% of progress, while you receive 2 difficult skill checks that will give you an additional 5% each, for a total of 25%. But there are 2 things that is good to know about the brand new part. Number 1. The brand new part drains your toolbox for 2.7 charges per second for a total of 13.5 charges over the 5 seconds it takes to install the brand new part. This is probably something not everyone is aware of, but knowing this might affect what kind of toolbox and what other add-ons you bring, but we'll come back to that. And number 2, the difficult skill checks counts as great skill checks. Okay, so as a brand new part counts as great skill checks, taking into consideration that you already have 4 stakeout tokens, installing the brand new part will not spend your stakeout tokens, meaning you could still do 4 more good skill checks, spending the 4 tokens to give you a total of 6 Hyperfocus tokens and the max amount of bonus progression. So in total, with a brand new part and the 6 Hyperfocus tokens, that will give you a total of 41.3% worth of repair progression. The speed of which you will gain this total progression bonus depends of course on how fast you get the skill checks. Hyperfocus and Stakeout is a popular combination that many survivors use when they want to be more efficient with the gens, but is it though? Repair speed penalties. I'm not going to talk too much about killer perks that affect repair speed, but I do want to mention how this actually works. Killers have a variety of perks to give survivors a penalty to repair speed. These would be Hex Pentimento, Thanatophobia, Scourgehook Gifts of Pain, and Dying Lights. Now, it's important to know that these perks doesn't affect the charges required to finish a gen, but at what speed you repair the gen, meaning your charges per second. So, with a Pentimento giving you a minus 30% repair speed, instead of repairing at a speed of 1 charge per second, you repair at 0.7 charges per second, meaning it would take about 130 seconds to repair the gen alone at base. And you might be curious, how long does it take if we are under the worst case scenario? Let's say the killer have Pentimento, 6 stacks of Dying Light, and full stacks of Thanatophobia. This would give the survivors a total of minus 68% penalty to repair progression. That means if one survivor does a gen alone, it will take 4 minutes and 41 seconds. That is just insane. Toolboxes. As with medkits, toolboxes is the survivor's items for gen repairing and sabotaging. But for this video we will only focus on repairing. These toolboxes come in different variations, and those are 1 brown toolbox for repairing, 2 green ones both for repairing, and 2 purple ones, 1 for repairing and 1 for sabotaging. As for add-ons, these would be divided into 3 categories: speed, charges, and utility. So in total we have basically 4 toolboxes that are designed for faster gen progression. Now there is a huge difference between the medkits and the toolboxes. If we talk about the debate of whether to go for charges or speed, that have a lot more implications on the medkits than on the toolboxes. If you choose to go for charges on a medkit, that could mean the difference between having 1, 2, 3 or 4 health states worth of healing. With toolboxes, in most cases you will deplete your toolbox on one single gen, so choosing between speed or charges doesn't really make that much of a difference. Either you will go for speed and progress the gen really fast in the beginning, then it will deplete and you will go over to normal repair speed, or you will have a little bit slower of repair speed for a longer time, at which time you will go over to normal repair speed. So in total, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. So I compared the Engineer's Toolbox with double speed charges, the Engineer's Toolbox with double charges add-ons, and the Commodio's Toolbox with 1 charge and 1 speed add-on, to see which was the most effective one. I only did 1 great skill check on all the attempts to make it more consistent. As you can see, the Commodio's Toolbox with 1 charge and 1 speed add-on and the Engineer's Toolbox with double charges was completed in the same time at 1 minute and 12 seconds, meaning it takes 18 seconds less of repairing the gen. And last we have the Engineer's Toolbox with double speed that finished in 1 minute and 20 seconds. So as I said, there isn't really a big difference in the toolbox loadout, or, well, I'm gonna come back to that. So now that we have gone over the basics of repairing, the different perks and penalties and the toolbox loadouts, let's try to figure out how to make it as effective as possible. Hyperfocus and Stakeout. As I said, Hyperfocus and Stakeout has become a popular perk combination for many survivors who wants to be as effective on gens as possible. Stakeout gives you 1 token for every 15 seconds you are within the killer's tear radius while not being chased. So that means it will take 1 minute to get 4 tokens, which is the max amount. The value you will get out of the minute it takes, taking into account you do the 4 skill checks with Hyperfocus, is a total of 11% extra of bonus progression. Now do take into consideration that with Stakeout alone, you will still get an 8% bonus to progression. Hyperfocus itself would give you a 3% extra of progression bonus. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, and frankly, it isn't. This would require you to spend 1 minute inside the killer's terror radius to gain an additional 2% of progress on a gen by doing skill checks. This is of course situational, as you could be repairing a gen while another survivor is being chased nearby, feeding you tokens every 15 seconds. Let's say that would be the case for the duration it takes for repairing a single gen. 90 seconds divided by 15 is 6, so in total you could get 6 tokens while repairing the gen, meaning Hyperfocus would give you a total of 12.3% of progression bonus. Add the 6% from Stakeout, and that's a total of 18.3% of progression bonus. Now that's not bad at all, but then again, that would mean that you wouldn't get a skill check less than 15 seconds apart, so the Hyperfocus would keep stacking. Or you are confident enough, you can do the great skill checks without Stakeout. On the other hand, you could go up against a stealth killer who doesn't have a terror radius, or against a pig or pinhead where you spend your Stakeout tokens on the jigsaw boxes or the lament configuration. So as with many perks, this perk combination has some potential, but it's very unreliable, and that's why I might not recommend this perk duo. In general, there isn't really many perks you can bring to make those gen repair be more effective. We have talked about resilience, overzealous, and those kind of perks, but in total they don't really do that much of a difference. And even stacking the perks wouldn't really be reliable, as one perk requires you to be injured while the other requires you to cleanse a hex totem to get the most effect from, and you can lose that very easily. And that seems to be the case for most perks related to gen repair. They are very unreliable and require specific scenarios. So what perks do we have then that can be considered reliant and consistent? In other words, which perks would I recommend you using? So I'm going to show you my go-to build, which is the build I personally think is one of the most effective and consistent builds to go with, that I feel work well both alone and while repairing with other people. Number 1. Prove Thyself. I'm not really a fan of this one, as this one basically just partially counters a penalty you can, in theory, avoid. But still, if you do happen to repair gens with other survivors, it does indeed make a huge difference. And it's consistent, which is why I, maybe a bit surprisingly, would still recommend going with this perk. Fast Track. With this perk, in short terms you will gain an additional 3% of bonus progression for repairing gens for every hooked survivor in the match. In my opinion, this is more valuable than Hyperfocus, because either A, you will barely gain any tokens if no one gets hooked, which probably means you will already have a good chance of escaping the match in the first place, or B, everyone gets hooked both once and twice, giving you a total bonus of between 18 to 33% of progression from this perk alone. If I compare this with Hyperfocus alone, without Stakeout, it would be extremely challenging to get an equal bonus to progression for using Hyperfocus by itself, and bringing a perk that almost requires you to bring another perk to synergize with it isn't necessarily a good thing. Fast Track also gives you the freedom to choose yourself when you want to spend the tokens, as you can purposely do good skill checks only till you are ready to go for a great skill check and deposit the charges into a gen. Streetwise. This perk increases the effectiveness of your items by 25%. This means, in this case, for every charge you convert into the gen, you only consume 0.75 charges from your toolbox, meaning it will last longer. And meaning it will last longer also means that the gen repair speed will be shorter, as you keep the speed bonus from the toolbox for longer. I did a comparison with 3 different toolbox loadouts to see the difference. This time I chose a Commodious toolbox with double charges, a Commodious toolbox with 1 charge and 1 speed add-on, and an Engineer's toolbox with double charges. We see that even with Streetwise, the Commodious toolbox with 1 charge add-on and 1 speed add-on is still the best toolbox, but the difference between them is really small. It's merely 3 seconds. But in total, the winner did reduce the repair time by 25 seconds. Now, that is actually pretty damn good. And this all leads us directly into the last perk, which I also think is the best perk to go with for repair speed. Built to Last. When you deplete your toolbox, you can go into a locker for 12 seconds to get 99% of your charges back the first time. You can then do this more times, but with minus 33% of charges regained every time. This means that with this perk alone combined with the right toolbox, for an entire match you can reduce the total repair time of about 75 seconds. So with this perk you basically have 3 times the toolbox that you bring into the match. And that is why it's very important to bring the right toolbox. And as we established, the best toolbox would be the commodious toolbox with the wire spoon and the socket swivel add-ons. And there you have it, my recommended build for the sole purpose of doing the gens as fast as possible on a consistent level. To end this video, I just want to bring you a few tips. Timing. Timing is everything, and the reason I mention this is that I very often see survivors do the exact same thing over and over again. If they bring a toolbox or a brand new part into a match, the first thing they do is to install the brand new part and deplete the toolbox into the first gen they see. Now, why is this not the best idea? Number 1. After depleting the toolbox and installing the brand new part, there is a relatively big chance you will be interrupted by the killer at the start of the game. If the killer have any sort of gen regression perk, you might have just wasted your entire toolbox. Number 2. The first 2-3 gens in a match are not the most critical ones to finish as fast as possible, and depending on the killer, where you spawn, etc., more than often you will at least finish 2 gens early in the game. Pumping those out as fast as possible is a big waste of potential, and it might just indirectly force the killer to start putting more pressure by tunneling or camping the survivors. If you bring a brand new part, I recommend saving the brand new part and the toolbox for later in the game, when there are just 1 or 2 gens left. Those are usually the gens that will be the hardest to finish, especially if you are in a 3-gen situation. Being able to quickly finish a gen in that part of the match is extremely valuable. But unfortunately, there is yet another but. When you bring a brand new part, you need to install the brand new part before you can start depleting the rest of your toolbox. So the question is then, what is most effective, bringing a brand new part or not? I feel this question is situational and dependent on your plan going into a match. If you bring a brand new part, I would advise using this when it's most needed, meaning you probably won't use your toolbox until then. This could be really good in the endgame if you really need to finish off a gen really fast, and could of course be combined with potential energy and or fast track to finish a gen in just a few seconds, and as so it's a situational build. If we talk a more consistent and long-term effective build, I would not go with the brand new part, and this is hard to say as I know how good the brand new part is. Trust me, I'm not saying you should never bring one into a match. So to end this video, let's just do a quick summary of the most important pointers of this topic, as we have been through a lot at this point. You get a penalty for repairing a gen with other survivors. Even with Prove Thyself, you still will repair at a reduced speed. I highly recommend splitting up in the early game and do separate gens. All buffs are added together before penalties are applied, meaning that perks like Hex Pentimento and Thanatophobia should be taken seriously as they can be very punishing. There are not really that many perks that affects repair speed directly, and most of them can't be recommended as they are situational and requires specific circumstances to work. This means that Toolboxes does the most impact on repair speed, and the best loadout depends on the perks you're bringing. If you bring a brand new part, I advise to use this in the later game, as you risk losing a lot of potential by using it too early in the game. Start getting used to saving your big impact perks or add-ons till the end game when it's really needed. And yeah, that was all I had to say about the topic of repairing. I hope you did get some value out of this video, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, as I will do more of these videos in the future. Taking a deep dive into the game mechanics has been surprisingly fun. But anyway, until next time, have an amazing day and cheerio!